On the line with me is an individual who I basically crafted a website around, his expertise in national security and his fearless manner. We live in a politically correct age when every policy disagreement, with the modern left is devolves into an accusation of racism, homophobia, and the latest one, Islamophobia. Anyone that dares report on the ascendancy of Sharia around the world, who writes about radical Islam, writes about the infiltration of our culture and our government by radical Islam, is deemed an Islamophobe. And as I've tried to teach people in my day-to-day life, that the way to take on political correctness is to pretend that it doesn't exist, because the American people are a common sense people. They understand that political correctness is cultural Marxism. It's a form of intimidation to keep people silent, to not tell the common sense truth. Welcome to the show, Frank Gaffney, the head of Center for Security Policy, the person for whom Big Peace was launched around on July 4th. And boy, do you have a doozy of a story that encapsulates how political correctness and the invasion of radical Islam into the American culture and into the institutions of government has occurred right in front of our eyes.
Well, we do, Andrew, and I'm very proud that it was a story broken on BigPeace.com by our friend Patrick Poole, a member of a group I'd like to talk a little bit about, Team B2, we call it, that has been doing some fantastically important work, understanding that what we're up against really is, some people call it radical Islam, as you did, and other people have other names for it, but I think it's best described as Sharia. And those who adhere to it are absolutely, indisputably our enemies. They are seeking to destroy this country explicitly. They're doing it in various ways. And the story that we're here to tell tonight a little bit, and that Patrick Poole, unveiled Monday night, is about a particularly egregious example of how the adherents to Sharia, who are pursuing not just through violent means, the terrorism of 9/11 and so on, but through a stealthy kind of what they call civilization jihad, have made unbelievable progress, specifically under this administration. But, it was to some extent happening in
Frank, let's cut to the chase. You said that they've infiltrated. They've infiltrated to the extent that Patrick Poole writes that a known Hamas operative by the name of Sheikh Kifa Mustafa was given a personal tour through the National Counterterrorism Center and the FBI training facilities at Quantico. That's outrageous.
It is unbelievable to most people. This is a guy who was an unindicted co-conspirator in the largest terrorism financing trial in American history. He's acknowledged that he worked for 6 years for that organization, the Holy Land Foundation. He's got ties of a variety of kinds to this Sharia program, and yes, the United States government, the FBI specifically, its Chicago office, has said to us, my colleague Christine Brim at Secure Freedom Radio has gotten on tape an FBI spokesman by the name of Ross Rice out of the Chicago office of the FBI saying this guy is a valued member of our Muslim community here in Chicago. So this valued Muslim member of the community and Hamas terrorist operative got, yes, a personal tour along with other members of the so-called Citizen Academy, the capstone of a 6-week program by the FBI, it boggles the mind, but it really speaks to the larger problem, Andrew, that the United States government, particularly under the Obama administration, and I think specifically as a result of the mismanagement, if not downright malfeasance, of John Brennan, the Homeland Security Advisor, we are blind, we are clueless, we are enabling the penetration and the subversion of our country and government by these Sharia adherent types.
Well, he went in, according to a report at WLS Radio Chicago, ABC affiliate. I wish that this would get on ABC News. he went in and he started to push the FBI agents to fully explain everything from the Bureau's use of deadly force policy to racial and ethnic profiling. It sounds like the Council on American Islamic Relations is in there and is basically acting as an agent to tell these people, how are you going to placate us? Not how can we act as a bridge and help to infiltrate radical cells of terrorists. He's there to put the FBI, just as CARE is there to put the media at a politically correct checkmate.
It's all about submission. That's what Sharia, that's what the literal meaning is, of Islam is submission. That's what Sharia is all about. It's information dominance. And to the extent that, unbelievably, in the press conference we had today with several other members of our Team B team, calling for John Brennan's resignation, because he has helped institute this kind of lexicon that prevents our law enforcement personnel, our intelligence community personnel, our military personnel, our homeland security personnel from even talking about the kinds of things we're discussing here, let alone counteracting them. And so, Andrew, what we're seeing is, yes, Muslim Brotherhood operations, and these guys, by the way, have their mission as the destruction of Western civilization from within, inside our government, inside, in some cases, in the case of personnel, inside our government, in other cases, influence operations that have gotten inside and are bending our minds to their will in such a way that we are greatly exposed to not only influence operations, but I believe this real stealth jihad, which is a kind of pre-violent assault on the Constitution, on our freedoms, and ultimately on our government and way of life.
Well, Frank, one of the reasons why I wanted to work with you is you could explain these incredibly complicated things. I've always said that when it comes to this issue, I'm just a layman who's trying to put the pieces together to try and have a comprehensive understanding of what Islam is, Islam the religion, what Islam is as a political force, and how it works, not just for Islamic societies that live under Sharia law, which is an all-encompassing thing, how Sharia invades other countries. And there is a huge juxtaposition for me that the mainstream media will not touch, and that is in a nation that lives under Sharia law, individuals do not have rights. Women don't have rights, gays don't have rights. It is for the left the ultimate nightmare society in terms of their proclaiming their love of individual human rights. Yet, when people who come from those from who are trying to spread Sharia do not apply in the United States or in Europe onto the people around them, they don't apply that anti-gay, anti-female attitude within the media or within the institutions. What they do is they use the political correctness and our perception of our human rights, and they use it against us as a weapon. The very rights they don't grant their own citizens, they use our rights against us to put us at check. And it seems to be that it's a big, obvious, fundamental lie that they're selling us.
Well, let me just make one point that I think is an important clarification. I believe that there are a lot of Muslims who are practicing what they think of Islam without wanting to subject themselves, their wives, their children, or anybody else to Sharia. And I'm not going to get into an argument about whether that's real Islam or not. The point is, those folks who tend to be peaceable, tolerant, law-abiding, in this country, patriotic Americans, are not the problem and may be, in fact, part of the solution. But those who do adhere to Sharia, and that's where the political program really comes in, Andrew, because, as you said, it is comprehensive. It is, in fact, totalitarian. It is a brutal means of controlling people, and it's all about power. It's not about faith. It's got a patina of religiosity to it, but it is basically about power. And that's the distinction I think I would draw between Sharia on the one hand, a problem for sure, and Islam as practiced by these other folks, which I think may not be. But here's the thing. You're so right. It is astounding that we listen day in and day out to people on the left actually apologizing for or making excuses for or otherwise enabling the insinuation of Sharia if it actually takes hold. Those feminists, those homosexuals, those Jews, liberals more generally, are going to be the people who are not going to be tolerated under this Sharia program. They have every self-interest to help the rest of us oppose it and to keep America Sharia-free. And if I could just say, Andrew, the way to break this code is to take a look at a terrific new report that this Team B2 that I've been discussing put out on the 15th of September. It's entitled ShariaTheThreat.com. That's where you'll find it. Sharia, the Threat to America is the full title, and you have been very kind to serialize it at bigpeace.com in recent days. But it's really must-reading. If the people in the savage nation want to know what the devil's going on here, how does this penetration of the FBI take place? What is John Brennan doing, saying, jihad has nothing to do with violence or terrorism or Islam in the sense of holy war? I mean, these are the sorts of things that, as you say, Andrew, you're a representative figure and leader, to be sure, but you're bringing common sense to these problems. I'm sure most of the people listening to us are as well. They need the facts that are available to them at ShariaTheThreat.com. I hope they'll check it out.
Well, I have one friend by the name of Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, and I've spent a lot of time with him. And after 9/11, I thought that there would be more Zuhdi Jassers who would come out who are practicing members of Islam, but they're under threat. You have to be brave, just like a Hollywood conservative who comes out and says, I support, George W. Bush. You know that your career's going to suffer. It seems to me with the threat of the creeping Sharia that those good and decent Muslims living in America and loving the freedom that's granted here, who would love for a reformation of sorts, that they are also the victims of this creeping Sharia.
Absolutely. Well, Zuhdi Jasser is a dear friend of mine as well, a great patriot, sort of the exemplar of the kind of moderate or patriotic Muslim that we all hope is, out there in our country. But he will be the first to tell you, and I'm sure he has, Andrew, that he's been ostracized. He's had 2 mosques basically throw him out. They've been taken over by, the Saudis and their Muslim Brotherhood friends, and that's what's happening in mosques across this country. That's why we're fighting over this mosque at Ground Zero. I was in Tennessee this week fighting about a mosque in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, where these guys are interested in incubating this Sharia program inside our country. We can't let that happen, and the first order of business, it seems to me, is changing the policy of our government, which has been a sort of, as one of my colleagues, Ace Lyons, says, see no evil, speak no evil kind of approach. And what that's going to do is get a lot of us killed. Because when these adherents to Sharia see what they think is evidence of submission, well, Muhammad's example and the Sharia tradition says, at that point, you've got to go violent. You've got to use the most brutal force to terrify and to force the complete submission of the population. And, again, we dare not let that message take hold. We dare not let that happen. We're hearing now that there are unspecified and some apparently persuasive threats of new violence. I'm going to hold John Brennan and the administration accountable if they happen because they've been incensed.
Well, Frank, you're always frightening, but you're always dead on. And you have had the courage, just like Michael Savage has had the courage, to call this threat for what it is, to talk about it. For a country that has been educated on political correctness, to find out that there's a real civilizational threat is a wake-up call. This is Andrew Breitbart sitting in for Michael Savage on the Savage Nation.
Savage.